Good evening, friends, and welcome back to the channel. If you're an investor, watcher, or simply curious about the future of the Iraqi dinar, you'll want to stick with me all the way through today's broadcast, because what we heard from Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani may very well be one of the most significant updates in years about the fate of the dinar. Yes, you heard that correctly. The headline reads, "Breaking update. Sudani confirms Iraq's central bank preparing dinar revaluation." And while many of us have been patiently waiting, today we examine exactly what was said, what it could mean, and why the timing is sparking so much talk. So if you've been tracking the dinar, set aside everything else for the next 20 minutes, because this may change the landscape. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss future developments. All right, let's dive in. First, what did Prime Minister Sudani actually say? In his most recent remarks, he addressed questions about Iraq's currency policy and the role of the Central Bank of Iraq. He said that monetary adjustments are being prepared for the coming period and emphasized that restoring confidence in the Iraqi currency is now a national priority. Though he did not use the explicit word revaluation, the context and source of his comments have triggered speculation among dinar watchers that a revaluation may be on the table. While we cannot take his words as an official order, the fact that a sitting prime minister is signaling change is noteworthy. We'll break down the statement more carefully in a moment, but suffice to say, when a government repeatedly mentions currency changes, investors tend to listen. The government and central bank have in recent years talked about stabilization, reform, and reducing dollar dependency. When someone in the position of the prime minister talks about changes to how the currency operates in international markets, it raises the possibility of a shift, perhaps in exchange rate policy, perhaps in mechanism. That sort of shift can have large implications both for domestic economic conditions and for external investors. Now let's look at some of the signals that are driving this chatter, things that could support the idea of a potential revaluation, though none of them constitute confirmation. First, the shift away from widespread domestic dollar transactions and greater emphasis on the dinar is one such signal. While the government has not explicitly stated we're going to revalue, policy actions that boost demand for the dinar internally could create pressure for a stronger currency. Second, discussions of banking regulation changes and stronger reserves are being mentioned, though details remain murky. Third, regional currency, swap agreements, and talks of using local currencies instead of the US dollar in trade have been flagged by observers, though again, not all confirmed. These sorts of moves could reflect an underlying intention to elevate the role of the dinar. But we must emphasize they do not equal an official revaluation announcement. Let's dig deeper into what the Prime Minister didn't say, because what he left unsaid is also important. He did not announce a fixed date for any revaluation, nor did he provide a new exchange rate figure. He also did not say, "We are going to revalue the dinar by X%. Instead, he flagged monetary adjustments and preparations by the central bank. That means this is likely a process, not an overnight event. For those who are holding dinar waiting for a sudden leap, this is a reminder that change, if it comes, may take time and may involve phases of reform rather than a single dramatic leap. Given that, what might the timeline look like? If the central bank and government are indeed moving toward a revaluation or adjustment, the process could play out over months, or even a year or more. Currency revaluations, especially for a country like Iraq, which has large dinar supply, infrastructure needs, and oil dependency, require multiple steps: reserve strengthening, regulatory reform, international market coordination, and signaling to markets. So, the mention of coming period by Sudani suggests that we may be in the preparatory phase. For investors, that means watching and monitoring is as important as acting. If you act prematurely, you could face risk. Let's talk about what this could mean for value. Right now, many dinar watchers use a rough official rate of 1:320 dinars to US1 as their benchmark For media, 1. If the dinar were to appreciate, or if a redenomination occurred even moderately, that could produce meaningful gains for those who hold dinars in percentage terms. For example, if it moved to say 1,000 dinars per US 1, that would be roughly a 24-cent gain on those terms. If it moved to 500 or 300 dinars per US 1, gains would be much larger. But those scenarios typically require major economic shifts and time. I emphasize possible, not guaranteed. Many variables must align, and there remains a very real risk that policy changes come but do not deliver dramatic currency upside. So what are the hurdles? There are several. First, political stability. Iraq has historically faced security issues, infrastructure rebuilding, governance challenges, and oil price dependence. Those factors make any rapid currency shift riskier. Second, supply of dinars. If there's a large supply of dinars in circulation, reducing that or backing it up sufficiently is a challenge. Third, export competitiveness. A very strong dinar can hurt exports, which are vital in Iraq's economy. Fourth, transparency and investor confidence. Any suspicion of rumors, scams, or unverified grists around the dinar can undermine credibility. For instance, independent commentary has flagged that the revaluation narrative for the dinar has been persistent over decades, yet often unfulfilled. Iraq Business News. Let's return to what the Prime Minister's statement signals. When a government official of Sudani's rank publicly emphasizes currency adjustments, it suggests one of two things. Either the authorities believe they have progressed enough to begin the process and want to prepare markets, or B, they are signaling intention to build confidence, perhaps ahead of reform, but not necessarily committing to a big upward move. In either case, the statement is meaningful, especially for investors and watchers who had long been hoping for official acknowledgement of change. It lifts a kind of fog of uncertainty and replaces it with expectation. That expectation alone can influence behavior. Banks, traders, importers, and exporters may reposition ahead of change. What might this mean for the different groups involved? For Iraqi citizens, if the dinar strengthens or is supported by policy change, that could improve purchasing powers, especially for imports, and reduce inflationary pressures. For businesses operating in Iraq, a stronger dinar could lower import costs as good, but potentially make exports less competitive, a challenge. For international investors or holders of dinars abroad, any upward move could benefit them if they are positioned properly and if the policy materializes. But remember, currency investments carry risk, and many observers caution that the dinar market in particular has seen speculation, high fees, and limited liquidity. Investopedia. How should viewers interpret this statement practically? One approach is to watch for the next trigger events. For example, the Central Bank of Iraq announces a change in the official rate or mechanism. New banking regulations take effect that favor dinar usage. IQD announcements of reduced dinar supply or redenomination. Official swap agreements or trade deals denominated in dinars rather than dollars. Or tangible increases in foreign reserves or gold backing. Without such actions, statements remain aspirations. So you may want to set alerts for when official notices come from Baghdad or the central bank, rather than rush purely on speculation, given that what might be realistic outcomes over 125. One scenario, the central bank gradually reduces the gap between the official rate and market parallel rates, improves transparency, increases dinar usage, maybe proposes a redenomination removing zeros, and then sets a new official rate. Another scenario, authorities focus instead on stabilizing the currency first, which may actually result in slower appreciation or even modest depreciation if pressures persist. Given Sudani's remarks, expect something closer to the first scenario, but it is still speculative. The important point, calendar watchers should mark key upcoming economic policy announcements in Iraq, such as banking regulation changes, central bank meetings, budget announcements, and international trade agreements. What are some red flags to watch and some green flags to look for? Red flags: continued large supply of dinars without control, no change in official statements, rumors outpacing actions, lack of transparency, no credible reform of the banking or currency management system. green flags official announcements of rate reviews, central bank commentary about reducing supply or enhancing demand, trade deals denominated in dinars, banking reforms requiring higher dinar holdings, international endorsements for the currency. If you see green flags, the preparation stage may be advancing. If red flags dominate, the risk remains high. Let's talk a little about investor mindset. If you hold Iraqi dinars, you may feel excitement at hearing prime ministerial remarks like this. But it's important to remain disciplined. Currency holdings by themselves do not guarantee gains, liquidity, exit strategy, cost of conversion, exchange spread, and regulation matter. You may want to treat dinar holdings as a speculative yes/no bet rather than the core of your portfolio. Make sure you understand local laws, transaction costs, and the fact that a currency move may take time, perhaps a year or more. Patience matters. Another point, media and social media commentary often overhype dinar revaluation scenarios. Many websites and analysis firms have flagged that the dinar revaluation narrative has been around for decades without delivering the overnight millionaire scenario. For example, one independent article headlines, "The Iraqi Dinar Revaluation Deception, 10 Persistent False Claims Exposed." Iraq Business News, that doesn't mean change won't happen. It means you should approach with realism. Use credible sources, check official statements, and watch for actual policy action. So, in summary, we got a solid signal today from Prime Minister Sudani saying the central bank is preparing currency adjustments. This is big news in the dinar world because official acknowledgement of change from a top-level government figure is rare. But the statement is still preliminary, no fixed date or rate. The process appears likely to take time, and there are significant risks. Therefore, we move from fruit to watch mode, which means staying alert, tracking developments, and managing expectations. What should you do now if you're tracking the dinar or holding dinars? Here are a few steps. Monitor official Iraq government and Central Bank of Iraq announcements. Keep an eye on major economic indicators for Iraq oil revenue trends, foreign currency reserves, banking regulation changes, trade deals in dinars. Review your own investment positioning, understand how easily you can convert dinars, understand fees and practicality. Stay away from speculative gurus or promised overnight RV claims. Treat those with caution. Consider diversification whether you hold dinars. Make sure you also have a sound broader portfolio. This way you're prepared and informed, but not overly exposed to single event risk. Finally, why 2025 might be particularly interesting? Because we are now several years into Iraq's reform efforts. The Prime Minister is speaking publicly about currency matters. The central bank's role is changing the global environment. Oz oil prices, regional trade, US dollar usage is shifting. If the government chooses to act, this year may become the year when the groundwork laid earlier begins to manifest. Or, conversely, it may be the year when reform stalls or is delayed. That's why the next few quarters could be pivotal. For those who have been holding dice on the dinar, this is not a sit back and sleep period. It's more like eyes open and watch. So there you have it, a full breakdown of today's breaking update. Prime Minister Sudani's statement, context, what it could mean, what to watch, and how you might position yourself. Don't forget, this is not a guaranteed outcome. It is a possibility that now appears somewhat more credible than before. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with others who follow the dinar story, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Iraq will revalue the dinar this year? What rate do you expect? Let's keep the dialogue going. Thanks for staying with me, and we'll continue to monitor developments live. See you in the next update.